let's start with the Never Trumpers and your article, which I'm serious is really must read. It was an absolutely fascinating retrospective on how the hell did we get here? What happened? Like all the cannons were lined up to try to stop this. This was the Republican Party. It was going to take care of its own, clean up the mess. You laid out in jarring reminder detail what happened to the Never Trumpers. So just remind us what happened to all these gals and mostly guys. Like, why didn't they get this done?
That's an excellent question. I think that there's a few different reasons, right? And I laid them out in the piece. But I'm somebody who kind of came into Never Trump as a complete outsider. I worked in education communications for 25 years. And then I was just terrified about Trump taking over the party and stuff like that, because I had been a moderate Republican and that I said, that's it. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to switch careers midlife and I'm going to get involved in this and really try and stop this. And the point of my piece was that everything we've tried to throw at it has not worked because clearly we've failed. We ended up with the worst possible scenario. Trump's in again. He survived all of the potential legal threats against him. And on top of that, his vice president used to be one of us. He was a Never Trumper. So that can only be described as a failure. And it's a shame because there have been some small victories. There have been battles that have been won, but ultimately not the war. So how did we get here? Now, looking back in retrospect, I have some opinions on that. Like I think that having been someone in behind the scenes of this whole movement, I guess you could call it, I think we got too comfortable. I don't want to say all of us, but I think some people just got too comfortable.
Was there a seminal moment? I remember the debate process. Oh, good gravy. Like in my social media feed, I have some history is not kind. I watched that first debate where Trump was up on the stage and the rest of them looked like a clown car as well. And I'm like, maybe I'm crazy here, but I'm finding this super entertaining. I remember Jon Stewart was doing the chef's kiss. This is great. This is going to be so remarkable. Was there a moment where you guys, I'm including you in this, like where you guys lost it? Was there like oh my gosh, this is escape lab containment here?
Yeah, I think for me, it was like Super Tuesday in 2016 when I think especially when he cleaned up in the South. I really expected the South to come through and see this guy as, he's just like some Yankees with a golden toilet and all of this, and come through and say, yeah, no, this is not the guy. And I think at that point when that's how far back this goes. When I saw that Super Tuesday win in 2016, I thought, oh, really in trouble. And then at that time, if people were dropping out like flies, and then you had Rubio held on for a little bit, and then you had Kasich was still hanging in there for a while. And I think the very last to go was Ted Cruz. And that was that. But I still thought that we were going to be able to stop him in November. I still thought, okay, we still have a shot. And then that didn't happen. And that's when it was clear that there was something really, and you alluded to this in your opening piece, he very clearly latched on to a real feeling, and we know this, right, among Americans. And
right.
Unlike what I would say Bernie Sanders being sincere about it and actually wanting to correct those errors, you had Trump do it as a populist, as a demagogue, and using that feeling, which he was able to just target and use it to create this massive movement for himself. So for me, that's long story short. Like, to me, it was over almost before it began, even though Never Trump went on.
Do you mind personalizing this for just a little bit? Because here you are as a moderate Republican. I used to work with a lot of these folks because this was my whole career as a congressional staffer. I worked exclusively for members of Congress and managing congressional races in swing districts, in contested territory, where I got along with Republicans because we would swap seats and jobs back and forth. And I still maintain a fairly robust text friendship with some of my Republican counterparts. So you and I were in similar, I guess, territory, maybe on slightly different sides of the party divide, but it wasn't that big a divide at the time. Did you have a personal moment where you're like, all right, I'm out?
May 3rd, 2016. Yeah, that was it.
What was that?
That was when Trump clinched the nomination for the Republican nomination. And I was like, this isn't my party anymore.
Hmm.
And then I actually wrote another piece earlier talking about my sort of transition from a moderate Republican to a moderate Democrat, and that it wasn't a big jump, quite right. I don't really have a lot of my opinions haven't changed all that drastically on things, which is interesting because then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I was a rhino. I just didn't realize it. But I think what it was is just that you had this transition of the party into something very different when you had the Tea Party come in, and it was a much more populist type Republican Party, and that really wasn't the party I signed on for. And so I think that it was actually a long time coming, and then it just was finally like, this is it. This isn't me anymore, if it ever was. And so yeah, that was the turning point for me.
But of course, it's like the parody of local news stations where they say the news just keeps on breaking. The failure just kept on failing in a way because the never Trumpers, it seemed like it's like, okay, this one got away from us. Okay, our bad. You may have had a little something to do with it too, Democrats. Could have done better with your nominee. So there it is. But let's get this back. And there was this profusion of strong, never Trump organizations in this
Mhm.
2018, 29 time period. You cover this in your article as well. And most notable is the Lincoln Project. And Fred Wellman, by the way, former executive director, is a friend of mine, someone I've had on my show several times.
Mhm.
And we've gone over some of this painful territory together. But as the Cynthia Rice points out, the Never Trumpers, they're not exactly suffering in terms of their media projects. You point out in your article that the movement essentially left the political sphere and became a media movement. It became and a money-making venture in a way, but it didn't advance the cause at all. What happened there?
Yeah, so I think that and this was the frustration from a lot of us who worked in the background of the Never Trump movement, not the names that you know, but the people who worked in the background, because we would always grumble amongst each other that what is going on? We're not focused anymore on the mission. We've
Mm.
lost the plot here. It's become just, I think it's Charlie Sykes who says we were a political failure, but we were a commercial success. You know what I mean? In the sense that Never Trump became almost like its own club. And I think I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not trying to target anybody with this. I think that everybody went into it everyone went in with good intentions to defeat Trump because we saw early on what this was coming. But I think I saw Cynthia in the chat said it's become now it's like a money making, it's like we've gotten too comfortable now. It's just like, that's interesting too. The views don't change so much. It's more just like you're just moving the
Yeah.
goalposts politically, I guess. So yeah, I just feel like we got comfortable with it and it became more like just a business.